Most people think the 2011 Japan tsunami was one of the worst in history, and they're right. They're right. It was devastating. Over 15,000 lives lost, entire towns erased from the map. But here's what'll shock you. That wave was only about 40 meters tall at its peak. Throughout history, there have been tsunami waves that were 10 times higher than that. Waves so tall they climbed up mountainsides, waves that would dwarf the biggest skyscrapers in New York City. These aren't myths or exaggerations, these are documented events that actually happened. From Alaska to Norway, from Japan to the Pacific Islands, we're counting down the 5 biggest tsunami waves ever recorded. Number 1 reached a height that seems physically impossible, and I'll show you the evidence. Make sure you're subscribed because we cover the most mind-blowing natural phenomena on Earth. Most people think tsunamis only happen in the ocean, spreading across thousands of miles before hitting coastal cities. Believe it or not, though, there is a type of tsunami that occurs in completely enclosed bodies of water. And these can be even more devastating than their ocean counterparts. This phenomenon is called a splash tsunami, and it happens when massive amounts of rock or ice fall into confined spaces like bays or fjords. Most of these events go unnoticed because they occur in remote locations. However, one event in 1958 not only produced the tallest tsunami wave ever recorded, but created a scar in the landscape that's still visible today. On July 9, 1958, an earthquake measuring 7.8 on the Richter scale triggered a massive rock slide in Lituya Bay, Alaska. An estimated 90 million tons of rock, that's the weight of 450, Empire State Buildings crashed into the narrow inlet at over 200 miles per hour. The impact was so violent that it generated a wave that reached 1,720 feet high. To put that in perspective, that's taller than the Empire State Building. Taller than 3 Seattle Space Needles stacked on top of each other. Witnesses reported seeing the wave strip every single tree off the mountainside, like a giant lawnmower, leaving behind a distinct trim line that scientists can still measure decades later. Some scientists believe the initial splash reached even higher, possibly over 2,000 feet before settling into the main wave. But here's what's truly terrifying. This wasn't the destructive power of the wave that's most shocking. A mega tsunami this size, confined to a narrow bay, carried water displacement so extreme that it essentially vaporized everything in its path within seconds. 3 fishing boats were in the bay that night. 2 were lifted over the tree line and deposited back in the water, somehow surviving. 1 simply vanished, never to be found. The violence was so sudden, so absolute, that the laws of physics we understand about water no longer seem to apply back then. Pilots flying over Lituya Bay can still see the clear boundary clear. Vegetation stacks of only a number that nature's power operates on a scale we can barely comprehend. Most people think the worst tsunamis happen in the Pacific Ring of Fire near Japan or Indonesia. Believe it or not, though, the longest earthquake rupture ever recorded and the largest tsunami it generated started in a place most people couldn't locate on a map, southern Chile, a nation on the opposite side of the Pacific Ocean from Asia, yet its waves would kill people in Japan. 22 hours later, this phenomenon is called a tsunami, and it occurs when massive earthquakes generate waves powerful enough to maintain destructive force across entire ocean basins. Most tsunamis lose energy within a few hundred miles. However, one event on May 22, 1960, not only produced the most powerful earthquake in human history, but sent waves that killed people on 6 continents over a 48-hour period at 3:11 p.m. local time. A section of the Nazca Plate beneath the Pacific Ocean, 600 miles long. Imagine the distance from Boston to Charlotte suddenly slipped under the South American plate at a depth of 33 kilometers. The resulting 9.5 magnitude earthquake, the largest ever measured by modern instruments, ruptured continuously for 10 minutes straight. Entire cities in Chile rose or fell by several meters permanently. Coastal areas dropped below sea level instantly, flooding before the tsunami even arrived. The energy released was so immense that the entire planet vibrated like a bell for several days afterward. A phenomenon seismographs detected worldwide. In Chile, the waves reached 25 meters 82 feet, washing away entire towns within minutes of the earthquake. But here's where physics becomes almost unbelievable. Those same waves traveled across 10,000 miles of open Pacific Ocean, arriving in Hawaii 15 hours later, still measuring 35 feet tall enough to destroy downtown Hilo, killing 61 people. The waves continued traveling another 7,000 miles, reaching Japan 22 hours after the earthquake, still carrying enough energy to measure 18 feet high, all enough to kill 142 people and destroy 1,600 homes. Think about that. A wave generated by an earthquake in South America remained deadly enough to kill people in Asia nearly a full day later, after traveling a distance equivalent to halfway around the planet. But here's the truly remarkable part. It wasn't the waves' height that made them so destructive across such distances, it was their wavelength. Most tsunami waves measure 10 to 20 kilometers from crest to crest. The 1960 Valdivia tsunami waves measured over 200 kilometers across. That's 124 miles from the front of one wave to the front of the next. This meant each wave carried exponentially more water and energy, allowing them to maintain destructive power across distances that would have dissipated normal tsunamis completely. When a wave 124 miles long hits a coastline, there's no outrunning it, no waiting for it to pass. It just keeps coming for hours. An earthquake lasting 10 minutes, combined with wavelengths spanning 124 miles, created a disaster that unfolded in slow motion across 2 full days. In Chile alone, 1,655 people died and 2 million were left homeless, 40% of the nation's population displaced. The waves crossed the Pacific at 442 miles per hour, arriving in Hawaii with 15 hours warning, but still killing dozens because early warning systems didn't exist. By the time the waves reached Japan, 22 hours had passed. Yet they still arrived during sleep hours, 3 a.m. local time, catching coastal residents completely unaware. The total death toll exceeded 2,000 people across 6 countries, making it one of the few disasters in history where the initial earthquake killed fewer people than the tsunami it generated. Thousands of miles away, the 1960 Valdivia earthquake and tsunami changed how scientists understand planetary-scale disasters. It proved that tsunamis could be global events, not just regional ones, and led directly to the creation of the Pacific Tsunami Warning System in 1965. Today, buoys across the Pacific Ocean monitor wave heights in real time, capable of detecting tsunamis the moment they form and providing hours of warning to distant coastlines. The disaster also established the 9.5 magnitude threshold, the maximum earthquake size the planet can physically produce given current tectonic conditions. In 65 years since, no earthquake has come close to matching it, and scientists hope none ever will. As the entire planet runs like a water, and waves travel 17,000 miles while remaining deadly, we're reminded that we don't live on separate continents, we all live on one interconnected ocean. And what happens on one shore can arrive on another before the same crisis. Most tsunamis in recorded history are regional disasters, affecting one country or maybe 2. Believe it or not, though, there's a rare class of tsunami so powerful, so geographically massive, that it can kill people on multiple continents in the same day. And until December 26, 2004, most scientists believe this kind of event was theoretically possible but unlikely to happen in modern times. These are called transoceanic tsunamis, and they occur when megathrust earthquakes rupture fault lines hundreds of miles long, displacing trillions of gallons of water in a single moment. Most submarine earthquakes are too small or too deep to generate significant waves. However, one event on the day after Christmas, 2004 not only created waves that traveled 3,000 miles across an entire ocean, but killed people in 14 different countries, making it the deadliest tsunami in recorded history. At 7:59 a.m. local time, a section of the Indian Ocean seafloor 750 miles long, longer than California, stretching from San Francisco to San Diego, suddenly ruptured 30 kilometers beneath the surface. The resulting 9.1 magnitude earthquake, the third largest ever recorded by seismographs, released energy equivalent to 23,000 Hiroshima atomic bombs. In the span of 10 minutes, the ocean floor shifted vertically by 15 meters, 50 feet, lifting a volume of water equivalent to 1,500 Olympic swimming pools every second for 600 seconds. Straight. In deep water, the waves traveled at jet aircraft speeds 500 miles per hour but measured only 2 feet tall, passing beneath ships completely unnoticed. But as they approached shorelines and the ocean floor rose, physics took over. The waves slowed to 30 miles per hour but grew in height, exponentially reaching 100 feet in Banda Aceh, Indonesia, tall enough to submerge a 10-story building. Witnesses described a wall of black water stretching from horizon to horizon. Some waves traveled over 1 mile inland, as far as downtown Chicago is from Lake Michigan. Satellite images showed the waves as they crossed the Indian Ocean, visible from space as ripples spreading across 3,000 miles of water. But here's what made this tsunami uniquely catastrophic. It wasn't just the height or the speed, it was the duration. Most tsunamis consist of a single wave or maybe two. The 2004 tsunami arrived in wave trains of 7 to 9 waves, each separated by 20 to 40 minutes. Survivors who thought the danger had passed and returned to search for family members were caught by subsequent waves. In some locations, the water didn't retreat for over 6 hours, essentially creating a temporary flood that rose and fell multiple times, each time carrying more debris, more destruction, more lives. An earthquake of this magnitude, combined with coastal population density exceeding 1,000 people per square kilometer in some areas, created a death toll that still defies comprehension. 227,898 people confirmed dead or missing, the population of an entire city simply gone. Entire coastal communities in Banda Aceh were reduced to concrete foundations. Buildings, trees, vehicles, and every trace of human habitation vanished. Children lost parents, parents lost children, and entire extended families were erased. The economic damage exceeded $15 billion, but the human cost can never be calculated. The 2004 Boxing Day tsunami changed the world in ways beyond the death toll. It led to the creation of the Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning System, placed sensors across the seafloor, and made tsunami a household word globally. Today, memorial sites across 14 countries mark the high water points where the waves reached. From Indonesia to Thailand, from Sri Lanka to Somalia, a chain of remembrance spanning an entire ocean. It remains the deadliest natural disaster of the 21st century so far, and a permanent reminder that when the Earth moves beneath the ocean, no coastline is too distant to be safe. The waves that started in Indonesia killed people in Africa 7 hours later, proving that in our interconnected world, a disaster anywhere can become a tragedy everywhere. When engineers build dams, they calculate for every possible disaster: earthquakes, floods, even terrorist attacks. Believe it or not, though, there's one scenario that early dam designers never considered. And when it finally happened in 1963, it created a wave so massive that it traveled over a concrete wall taller than a 72-story building without the wall breaking. This is called a displacement tsunami, and it occurs when landslides fall into reservoirs with such force that the water has nowhere to go but up and over. Most of the time, reservoir slopes are engineered to remain stable. However, one event in the Italian Alps not only created the tallest tsunami wave ever measured traveling over a man-made structure, but killed nearly 2,000 people without the dam itself sustaining a single structural crack. On October 9, 1963. At 10:39 p.m., the entire site of Monte took 260 million cubic meters of rock and forest. That's enough material to bury all of Washington, D.C. under 85 feet of debris detached and slid into the Vagent Dam Reservoir in under 45 seconds. The mountain moved at speeds exceeding 70 miles per hour, displacing the entire contents of the reservoir in a single catastrophic moment. Seismographs across Europe registered the impact as a magnitude 4.0 earthquake. The resulting wave reached 250 meters above the dam's reservoir, level that's 820 feet. Taller than two statues of Liberty stacked on top of each other. High enough to completely submerge the Washington Monument with 265 feet to spare. But here's what defies comprehension. The Vagent Dam stood 262 meters tall, one of the highest dams ever built at that time. The wave didn't break through the dam, it simply rose up the canyon wall of the liquid mountain over the top of the waterfall falling in reverse. Survivors in the valley below reported feeling thunder, without end as 50 million people. Meters of water, 13 billion gallons, fell 820 feet into the tunnels. Here's the truly horrifying part. It wasn't the height of the wave that made this disaster so deadly. It was the speed. As the water fell from such an extreme height, by the time it reached the ground floor, it was traveling at over 100 kilometers per hour, 62 miles per hour, carrying boulders, the size of houses, trees, and the remains of the villages it had already destroyed upstream. The town of Longarone, home to 2,000 people, was completely erased in under 4 minutes. When rescue workers arrived the next morning, they found only mud and silence. A wave on this scale, combined with gravity acceleration from an 800-foot drop, created impact forces equivalent to multiple atomic bombs. The wall of water and debris scoured the valley clean, removing soil down to bedrock in some places. Over 1,900 people died, entire family lines were erased, and 5 towns simply ceased to exist. But the Vagent Dam remained perfectly intact, a monument to engineering excellence and catastrophic failure to understand the landscape. Engineers had built a perfect dam but ignored the mountain. Today, the Vagent Dam still stands. Empty and silent, no water has filled its reservoir since 1963. It remains the tallest unused dam in the world, a concrete tombstone marking one of the greatest engineering disasters in history. The disaster fundamentally changed how dams are designed worldwide, forcing engineers to study not just the valley they're filling, but the mountains surrounding it. Because sometimes, the greatest threat to a structure isn't the water it holds, it's the earth beneath it, waiting to move. When most people think of natural disasters in America, they imagine hurricanes hitting Florida, tornadoes tearing through the Midwest, or earthquakes shaking California. Believe it or not, though, one of the most catastrophic events in U.S. history happened in a place most people associate with rain and coffee, the Pacific Northwest, and it created a type of tsunami that scientists didn't even know was possible. This phenomenon is called an impact tsunami, and it occurs when massive landslides crash into enclosed bodies of water like lakes, reservoirs, or fjords. Most of the time, these create relatively small waves confined to the immediate area. However, one event on May 18, 1980, not only produced the largest terrestrial landslide ever recorded in modern history, but generated an inland tsunami so tall it defied everything scientists thought they knew about wave physics. At 8:32 a.m. on that spring morning, the entire north face of Mount St. Helens, 2.3 cubic kilometers of rock, that's 3.7 billion cubic yards, enough material to bury Manhattan under 30 feet of debris, collapsed in a single catastrophic failure. This mountain-sized avalanche, traveling at speeds exceeding 150 miles per hour, cloud directly into Spirit Lake, which sat just 5 miles from the volcano's base. The collision between solid mountain and liquid lake created what witnesses described as a wall of water rising like an explosion. The resulting tsunami reached 860 feet above the pre-eruption lake, level that's taller than the 630-foot Gateway Arch in St. Louis, nearly 3 times the height of the Statue of Liberty, tall enough to submerge Seattle's Space Needle up to its observation deck. If you stood at the base looking up, it would take 60 seconds just for your eyes to travel from the bottom of the wave to its peak. The wave was so massive that it stripped every tree, every boulder, every trace of life off the surrounding mountainsides up to 860 feet above the waterline, leaving behind what geologists call a trim line, a perfect horizontal scar that's still visible from aircraft today. But here's what makes this event truly mind-bending. It wasn't the tsunami that did the most damage. As this 860-foot wall of water raced across Spirit Lake, knocking down centuries-old trees like toothpicks and destroying everything in its path, something even more terrifying was gaining on it. The pyroclastic flow, a superheated cloud of ash gas and rock traveling at 300 miles per hour, eventually overtook the wave. Water that moves at 60 miles per hour seems unstoppable, until you witness gas moving at 5 times that speed. The collision between water and ash created something unprecedented. Magma flows that traveled over 50 miles down river valleys, destroying bridges, highways, and hundreds of homes. These weren't normal floods, they were flows of concrete-thick sludge carrying entire trees, cars, and pieces of buildings with temperatures exceeding 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The mixture was so dense that rivers became completely clogged, forcing the Army Corps of Engineers to spend months sludging millions of tons of sediment. Meanwhile, Spirit Lake itself nearly doubled in size, expanding from 1,300 acres to 2,200 acres, a 70% increase as the landslide debris dammed its natural outlet. 23 years later, Spirit Lake finally stabilized at its new elevation of 3,406 feet, constantly monitored and maintained to prevent catastrophic drainage. But the trimline remains a perfect horizontal boundary visible from miles away, where vegetation abruptly stops at exactly 860 feet above the lake, marking the high water point of the tallest inland tsunami ever recorded. It's a permanent reminder that tsunamis don't just happen in oceans, that mountains can become liquid in seconds, and that the forces sleeping beneath America's beautiful landscapes can awaken with world-changing violence. The wave may have only lasted minutes, but Mount St. Helens proved that even in the heart of a continent, you're never truly safe from the ocean's fury, because sometimes the mountain brings the ocean to you.